time for another episode of Two Bad Nerds.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Danny. Alright, so we're going to review The Dark Knight Rises.
Such a good movie.
It's amazing, I know. I couldn't wait to do this review of it because there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's start it off, because this is going to be a long episode because I got a lot to talk about. So, the beginning, the way the movie starts, the airplane scene.
I first got to say I was confused as hell as what was going on. I got to put it out there. It's not till the middle of the movie that I understood who the hell that person was, what his significance was, and yeah. So what did you think about the front?
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. Actually, I should have started with this first. How much did you review before you saw the movie?
Not really anything. I mean, I just saw, trailers.
Okay.
And that's it. I didn't look at the website. I didn't do anything more than just look at the trailers that I saw on television.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's the same thing with me. I didn't read any reviews. I barely looked at any trailers. I just didn't want to know anything about it going into it. I saw it, midnight Friday, so I saw it right away. So I was able to read the reviews afterwards. But yeah, going into it, I knew nothing about it. And there's a lot of things that I had forgotten that I had even heard about because I wasn't really reading about it going up into it. So which kind of helped my enjoyment of the movie.
Yeah, and actually, before I asked to borrow the second movie, because I was really concerned that I would need to see them all in succession to each other, you know what I mean?
Right.
But after watching the movie, as you mentioned to me too, since you got to see it before I did, you didn't really have to, which is a good thing.
Right. Yeah, one of the big points is that, if you've only seen the second one, really only in the last 10-15 minutes of the second one has anything to do with the third one.
Yes, that's one point I gotta say. I was like, what? They tailored so much of the first one, and they tied that into the third one so much that me personally, I couldn't find a single trace. You obviously did.
Well, the Two-Face.
The second one. Well,
Two-Face,
you're right.
Right. The last 10-15 minutes is incorporated into the third one, and that's it. None of the Joker stuff is included. I mean, they talk about the fact that Bruce's girl, Rachel Dawes, died. They talk about that, but that's it, and that's even barely hinted at.
Yeah.
So you could kind of have just seen the first one and the third one and be okay.
Yeah. True.
But if you only saw the second one and then go into the third one, you might be a little confused.
Yes, exactly. Ra's al Ghul, if I said it right. Or
right. The League of Assassins starts off. So anyway, getting back to the airplane scene, you're not the first person to tell me that. People who don't know the comics or don't even if you know the comics, if you didn't read or review the trailer, watch the trailer, you wouldn't know who this guy is. If you haven't looked at IMDb or any of that stuff, who's this masked guy?
Right. Well, actually, he's not the guy I was talking about. I knew specifically who he was because I watched the animated series of Batman. I knew who Bane was. I knew who he was going to be, and I knew that he's technically supposed to be like some guy. He wears this equipment to kind of keep him in check and like overpowerful. That's it. But I was talking about the guy he was worried about taking out of that plane.
Oh, okay. The doctor.
The doctor.
Right.
That's who was confusing to me.
That was it was a little hard to understand who was on whose side at that point, right?
Yes, exactly. There was so much going on. I mean, it was good, a good opening action, kind of intense, kind of over the top too, with the whole plane.
Yeah.
That was, I don't know, I liked it, but then I was like, this kind of seems forced over the top. Like, why were they taking all this time to do this to a plane, and then the freaking wings it was just weird. It
did seem like a bit much. Like, you're going to kidnap the guy. You're going through a lot of effort to cover up that he was kidnapped. I mean, they gave him a mini blood transfusion on the plane. I mean, you never see that.
Yeah.
And then the other guy, now you remember, when they first come on the plane, there's two guys in hoods. Now, one we obviously know as Bane, and one is one of his soldiers. Okay? And then when it's revealed that he's Bane and he goes to take the doctor away, the other guy who was in the hood tries to get away.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "No, brother, you have to stay."
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how committed these guys were to Bane's cause, and that I think is a big a point that they drive home right in the beginning, that these followers of Bane are dedicated to his cause.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
they did do a good job with that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they made it so dramatic, because they wanted to engrave it into your skull that these guys are not just people that are going to turn at a moment's notice because
Right.
doing this for personal gain. No, they have an underlying reason, and it's because of the cause. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And you see right away how far they're willing to go for their cause. You know, and that'll play in part later on too. You know, that they're dedicated to this.
Yep.
Now, when you first see Bane, you hear him before you see him.
That's my biggest gripe about the entire movie, not being able to understand Bane. Now,
Really?
yes, I wanted to ask you about that because you saw it in IMAX, and I was listening to Elvis Duran in the morning show on my way to work. For a couple of days, they've been talking about this on and off, and they did mention that one of their biggest gripes was in IMAX that his voice was very hard to understand. Now, I'm thinking in general his voice is hard to understand because it's muffled based on that effect that they're using.
Right.
And so sometimes I didn't really understand what he was saying until like 4 words into the sentence. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what he meant to say. So, again, I kind of understand why they did it, but it kind of sucks because I know I've missed some important things that he might have said.
Right. I agree. There was, I could hear most of it, 90-some% of it. You know, I was able to hear clearly, but there was several parts in the movie where I was like, wait, what did he say? But then based on like his actions, I was able to be, oh, okay, that's what he meant, or that's what he said. You know. But yeah, you're right. The processing of that
exactly,
it kind of draws you out a little bit.
Yeah, it actually might make me, once I get the movie, to actually put the subtitles on at least for one playthrough, just to understand everything that he says.
Yeah.
So that, honestly, I think overall that's my biggest drawback in the entire movie.
Yeah. I can definitely agree with you, and I will definitely be watching this with subtitles on the first time I get it, because I want to hear, you know, I'm going to be able to know everything that he says.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't a huge deal for me, but yeah, like you said, those couple seconds of processing can take you out of it. Now, besides his voice, what did you think about the way he talked?
I didn't really have a problem with it. I can't really remember. I'm only basing this on the animated series because that did carry off for many years.
But I mean, okay, maybe I should have been more descriptive. Like, looking at him as big as he is, as muscular as he is, and then having the voice that he had.
You mean like, how intellectual he sounded?
Exactly, yes.
Oh, okay. That there was
like that voice didn't fit that body.
Like there was a disconnect between his ogre stature.
Right.
Well, I mean, if they would have explained why he was so big, because from the little bit I think I know of Bane, he wasn't really all that big to begin with, but he has, you know, this crap. Which would kind of make you understand then, okay, he could have been an intellectual person. He got this thing, and now he's a big, brawny guy, but he can still talk intellectually.
Right.
But because that really wasn't explained, I mean, I don't think even they touched on that.
At all. At all.
And that kind of is stupid if you really think about it, because why bring Bane in when he's obviously a character you would think that they would embellish more on why he's Bane, why he's that big.
Right.
Why he has that.
They don't talk about it at all.
They don't.
All they say is that taking that off would cause him great pain. Yeah. But they don't explain that makes him stronger, that it makes him whatever. You know, they don't. It's just there for some reason.
For someone who doesn't know anything about Bane, they would probably just assume that the guy got strong, just like how Batman got strong when he was there for several months, you know, training and doing all that stuff. They would have just assumed.
Right.
Because they don't lead you to believe anything more, besides that he got hurt, because they show him in bandages and that his face was hurt, Bane.
Right, and they do, and that was another point I was going to bring up. Like, is that what they were trying to make us assume then, that because of him being hurt down in the pit, that he needed that apparatus to survive? But they never say that. Like, that's an assumption of mine.
Well, within that same flashback is when the betrayal happens, I believe, and yeah, you realize exactly who he is. So because of when they say it, I guess it's assumed that yeah, he's bandaged. She's plugging back in, his
the apparatus, yeah.
apparatus on his face. So I guess it's just assumed at that point.
Yeah, it just would have been nice if they would have explained it. But there's going to be other things that I'm going to get into that I'm going to wish they had spent a couple more seconds or whatever on.
All right.
Now, me personally, I love the voice. I love the way he talked because to me, when you see a character like that in a movie, you think they all sound the same. You think he's going to sound like the Hulk, like he's going to be just a deep-voiced, tough guy. And we've seen that a billion times. So for them to give him this, like, intellectual English Sean Connery-type accent, I think made him more scary as a villain.
Yeah.
Because he was so, he was so strategic in the way that he thought and the way he talked. He wasn't a street thug.
Exactly.
And
honestly, looking at the person who played him, I could hardly even tell it was him. It's Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, yeah.
And he's been in other stuff, but I've seen him in other movies. I cannot pinpoint. They did such a good job at really, because that thing really takes up a lot of his face. I'm looking at a screen.
Right. Well, and that was another point I was going to bring up was his acting is phenomenal. When you think about the fact that the only thing he has to show to the audience is his eyes and his head. Okay, so the only way he's conveying expressions to you is with his eyes and his head.
His body language, too.
Right, body language, but you know what I mean? But there was a lot of shots of just his face.
That's true.
Just his upper body, And the fact that you were able to get his expressions from that, because half his face is covered with this mask, was a phenomenal acting job, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he did a good job, absolutely. I did like the voice that he did, the talking, how he talked. I thought it was good. It didn't cause me any gripes about it, except, as we mentioned, not being able to hear every word that he said.
Right.
Anything. I don't have a problem with that. And that's true. It does differentiate this movie and this Hulk-type character from falling into that trap of always being the muscle-bound, brain-dead person, kind of.
Right. Right. Exactly. It gave him more of a permanent personality and it actually made him more of an imposing figure. Like even one scene, for example, when the two guys bring Commissioner Gordon down in the sewers, to Bane. Bane chokes the first one, kills him, throws him in the water.
Yep.
And then he says to the second one, "Search him, then I kill you."
Yeah.
He says it so flat, but it's so imposing and so scary the way he says it, because he can do it in a second. I mean, he doesn't even curse the entire movie. He barely raises his voice the entire movie, but still, he's as imposing a villain as any mastermind you're going to see in any kind of comic or any kind of movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, he did a really good job. They did a good job with their direction of his character, should I say. Because it was very well done.
It's very different from the second movie because the Joker in the second movie had very different changes in his inflection of his voice depending on the scene and what he was trying to say. There was times when he was very high-pitched like a child, and laughing. And then there was times he would yell and he would bark, at the screen.
I mean, that's also the character Joker.
Right.
Is all over the place.
Right, exactly, and that was imposing because you didn't know. He went from being a child and laughing to a very fearsome person, all in the same sentence. Whereas Tom Hardy had this character at the same voice, but he was still able to convey to you that imposing villain,
True.
Even though his lines may have been somewhat, flat as far as the delivery, but because of the way he says it and the way he accentuates the words, it still gives you that scariness.
Yeah.
So, that was good. I'm glad you brought it up that you didn't understand about the whole airplane thing. Even me, I did think it was a little. It was a little hard to understand when it was happening. Later on, I think you kind of get it.
Exactly. Later on, it just clicks, and they probably, they obviously did that on purpose, I guess.
Right.
They wanted to open it up to get your attention. Something's happening for a reason, but we're going to wait and to show you why.
Right. Definitely opened it up with a bang. I mean, it's definitely a great opening. So we're going to get into, after this opening, once they kidnap the doctor, then it goes to the Harvey Dent thing at the Wayne Manor. Now this is, I'm sorry, you want to say that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So this is when they talk about the fact that, people are kind of talking about how Wayne hasn't come out, and it's been 8 years since he's been seen, it's been 8 years since Batman's been seen, blah, blah, blah. I was kind of surprised at this point because I did not realize that there was this much of a gap between the second movie and this one.
I was taken back. I was still trying to process it while they were saying it. I was like, what, 8 years? Are you kidding me? 8?
It seems like a bit long, right?
Yeah, it seems like a very long time for them.
Yeah. A year or two, I could have understood.
And then on top of that, when they actually focused on Bruce Wayne, that he's still injured after 8 years, I'm sorry, that kind of didn't sit well with me. I'm like, 8 years, you would think that he would be able to have something, that he wouldn't be as injured as they say he was. You know what I mean? I don't know.
And that was another question. How is he injured?
Yeah.
Well, if he's been sitting up there for 8 years, well, how is he injured? That's another.
I honestly don't even remember at the end of 2.
He just takes off at the end of 2. He just drives away.
Right. How did he become injured in the first place? Now, not even how did he remain injured. I don't, like you said, I didn't remember any point in the end of 2 that he, at the end of 2, was seriously injured.
No, I don't either. And maybe we're missing that, but I don't remember him. I mean, he wasn't shot. He had that incident with Two-Face. He grabs the kid. I mean, he might have hurt his knee grabbing the kid, maybe, but if you're talking about an 8-year gap, you're really telling me his knee didn't heal in 8 years? You know?
And then, well, honestly, the only thing I remember, it was with the knee, but I thought it was something more of the lines that maybe the liquid in the knee or something.
Well, the doctor, because when he goes to the doctor, he says there's no cartilage in his knee.
Cartilage, that's what it was, no cartilage. So,
but how does that? I'm not a doctor. I don't know how that happens, but
I guess they put it in there because it could happen to anyone if you really think about it. I guess.
I think it was mainly put in there because they needed to have an excuse for Batman to lose the first fight to Bane. If he was still at his peak fighting condition and he lost, I don't think that would have made much sense.
Right, because then they had the whole recuperation, him getting stronger, all that stuff. It worked well because of how they set it up. He was injured.
Right. So I guess it's one of those things we're just supposed to accept that he became a cripple somehow in those 8 years, and then he somehow miraculously gets himself back into fighting shape. I mean, that was another one of my things was, okay, so he hasn't done anything for 8 years. Now all of a sudden he's Batman again. He's still able to do the things he did 8 years ago.
Well, he put that brace on his leg.
Right. He had the brace that fixed his knee, but, But
the funniest thing is that he did not have that brace, to my knowledge. I mean, they didn't show it, but when he was in the cave or the thing, I was like, okay, the brace helped him when he put on the bat suit again after 8 years, and that's great. But then he was captured. He went down to that whole thing. He's recuperating there. And the main thing that they focused on was his back. They put him in that sling to help him realign his back because one of his vertebrae was out or whatever the heck.
Right.
But they really didn't focus on his knee anymore.
No. His knee's miraculously healed now all of a sudden.
That brace was on there for such a short time, but it fixed his knee.
I mean, it's a comic movie. We got to accept some leaps of faith. It would have been nice. Again, this is what I'm talking about, where a couple of seconds of something could have made more sense. If they would have added a couple of seconds of him fighting, training, doing something in the Batcave to get himself back into shape, they could have had 20 seconds of it. Okay, now I can understand. He's back to Batman. He's back to fighting shape. But they literally go from him being a cripple to all of a sudden he jumps out the window on a grappling hook and goes to see Jim Gordon. The doctor just got done saying he has no cartilage in his knee. And 5 seconds later, he's jumping out a window.
Yeah, exactly. he just said beforehand that he couldn't do.
Right.
He said it to Alfred, right? Didn't he?
No. The doctor said to him. The doctor said to him, no hella diving or no hella skiing or something like that. And then he goes and jumps out the window.
Yeah. Doesn't make
well,
sense.
Again, like I said, it's a leap of faith. You just have to accept. The next thing, getting back to Wayne Manor, obviously the biggest thing that you see is Anne Hathaway as as Catwoman.
Yeah, let's talk about her.
Let's talk about her, because honestly, there were so many people going into this movie saying that she was going to be terrible.
I was one of them. I first of all, let me get this straight. I love Anne Hathaway. I've seen a lot of those chick flicks that she's been in, and I happen to really like them. Mm-hmm. But because of that, I think you have this predetermination of what the roles this character, this woman should be playing, or what she's good at.
Right.
So that really was the reason I wasn't sure if she could do this role, because when I think of Selena Kyle, is that her name, Selena Kyle?
Yes. Yep.
Kyle was the only thing that I couldn't remember. I'm thinking of this seductress, you know what I mean? And she's just sassy from the get-go and stuff like that. I'm like, can Anne Hathaway really do that? I mean, she's pretty, gorgeous even, but she can really play a seductress. And that's what I think of, honestly, when I think of Catwoman. But I must give it to her, because she blew me away. I was so satisfied with her delivery, especially because she's an actress first. And she knows how to act. That was the main point of this that I loved, because she does know how to act, even though she was given some cheesy liners, because that's what about, really. Everything about it was great.
It definitely, they could have really done bad with this character. This is not an easy character to translate to the movie. They could have made her, either too oversexed. They could have made her, the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman, fell out of a window, got bitten by cats, and now all of a sudden she has cat powers, which I don't know what those were.
And cat tendencies,
licking herself and meowing, which is just retarded. Okay? Nolan's universe is a much more, I'm going to use the term loosely, realistic universe. None of these characters have powers. They're just regular people that might be extraordinary, but they're still grounded in somewhat of reality. I thought Anne Hathaway was phenomenal as Catwoman. Phenomenal in all aspects. Just, being Selena Kyle, being herself, being as the Catwoman. They never call her Catwoman in the movie. Which I was kind of surprised, but makes sense, because why would they?
Yeah.
She doesn't call herself Catwoman,
You got me thinking. I want to really skim the movie now.
Yeah, they don't call her Catwoman. She's referred to as a cat burglar, but they never call her Catwoman. And she doesn't wear... And here's another cool thing that Nolan... phenomenal idea. The goggles.
Minimalist... Oh, yeah, I liked her goggles, but I loved her minimalist outfit.
Yes, yes.
That could have went bad too, There might even be some people that are like traditionalists and like, oh, she doesn't look enough like Catwoman.
Right.
To be Catwoman, but she had her ears. She did not have a belt, which to my knowledge...
She didn't have ears. She had what looked like ears when she flips the goggles back.
I thought
that's what was so cool about Nolan. What he did with that, because the goggles, when she had them on, when she would take them and flip them back, they'd be sticking up, so it would look like cat ears. But she didn't actually have cat ears on.
I guess I was missing it in some way. I was looking at them, and they look freaking like ears.
Yeah, they did, yeah. But they flip behind her head, almost like headphones.
Yeah.
But they would stick up like that. And that was, again, her outfit makes sense, because it's something that you could see a burglar having. A black outfit with gadgets on the sides. She didn't have nails. Cat claws. She didn't have a bola, that she's going to throw at people, or spikes she was going to drop so people would trip on. None of that stupid stuff. She didn't have a tail,
Yeah.
She had an outfit that looked like a cat burglar.
Exactly, because this was less about costume and more about just realistic or functionality.
Right, exactly.
And that's what it was. I mean, the only thing that they really a little bit embellished on was her heels that happened to be a little shiny, and she
they were a little high for a burglar.
Exactly, because showing you there that she is Catwoman, she is doing something that only a little, I don't know, I don't want to really say seductress, but
she was a seductress at some points.
Yeah. You know. Someone like that in that kind of role would be doing. I mean, she's like, okay, I'm gonna do all this stuff, but I'm gonna do it in heels, you know. So yeah.
She was a seductress without being slutty about it.
Yes.
You know, it's a seductress with class, though. You know, everything that she did. The scene where she's in the bar, she's beating these guys' asses, and then the cops come in, and she immediately drops to her feet and starts crying like a woman.
Oh, that was my favorite.
It was great. The acting was phenomenal.
I love that part. I was like, seriously, when she screamed, and I was at the AMC locally to me, and that echo of her scream, you felt like a woman was actually really screaming out of it. Like, she just broke into that like that. It was so good.
She was being attacked. She sounded like a woman being attacked instantly. Yeah. You know, she went from being the attacker to the victim. Yeah.
Everything. That was such a good scene. That's a great point. Great scene. Great scene.
She was phenomenal. I couldn't say enough about her. She was great.
And I think this is good for her as an actress too. This is really going to open her up to a lot more possibilities. So
yeah,
they did a great job casting.
Definitely, because when you think of Anne Hathaway, you think of Disney, you think of Princess Diaries. You know, you think of the Devil Wears Prada. You know what I mean? But that's mainly what she's known for, is those type of princessy movies.
I was thinking there was only one time, and this was Bride Wars. You probably did.
I did see that, actually. The wife took, wife maybe
one point. Yeah, there was only one point in that movie when I was thinking afterwards, is like, what made me think that maybe she could do well. She was in the strip club, and the other one was there, and I can't think of her name right now, but she was kind of drunk, and she was dancing provocatively, because they were supposed to have like a dance contest, and they were both getting married. And she just looked amazing there, and she did some moves that like kind of, I was like, this is not you.
Right.
So in that regard, I was like, oh, there's a little bit of her that we don't know, and this is another instance.
Kind of a nasty side.
Yeah, exactly. So this is good. I think that was a good call for her.
No, she was phenomenal. What do I want to bring up to now? Well, let's bring up Miranda Tate. For people, this is going to be one of my reasons why I'm glad I stayed off the internet. Now, I knew that Talia al Ghul was in this movie, but I had forgotten about it going up into this movie. I had read about it months before the movie came out, but I had forgotten when time came to see the movie. Now, several people I know said this part was kind of spoiled for them, because when they went on IMDb, it listed the actress's name, and then, after it lists, who they're playing, so it listed behind there as Miranda Tate / Talia al Ghul. Now, later on, I guess apparently some people said they changed it. But for people who read that, that's a pretty big spoiler to know going into the movie that she's going to be Talia al Ghul.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and I don't see that it says Talia.
Not there now, right.
All it says is Miranda. Miranda, it says her name, Marion Cotillard, and then it says she plays Miranda.
Right. Right, so like I said, luckily I, hadn't read anything, so I didn't know going into it, so I was definitely surprised when I found out it was Talia al Ghul.
Now, when you click on it, yes, then it says right there in front of your face,
it says
Talia al Ghul, yes.
Yeah.
But you actually have to go an extra step, so but yeah, I would have been pissed too, because that's a big plot point.
That's a huge point, because for people who didn't know she was even in the movie,
and
that's big.
I was one of them. I was just as confused as the next person. I was like, oh shit, she's stabbing him?
Now let me ask you a question. Now, you as someone who doesn't read the comics, when you found out she was Talia al Ghul, did you know who that was?
Well, the funky last name I just assumed because I've seen it.
Right.
So really that's all it was, but
okay.
Obviously they set it up before in the movie saying that he had a son. So I wasn't, obviously that's what was the biggest, whoa, it's a daughter, it's a girl, it's not a guy.
Right.
I immediately thought, was there a sex change involved? Honestly, this is exactly what I thought. I was like, oh, a sex change? What the freak happened? You know? So then they explained it and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay. But no, I was shocked.
Okay. So, see, for me, when they first said that, when they were first hinting that Bane was the boy who climbed out, and that Bane was the son of Ra's al Ghul, you know, I obviously know from the comics that's not true. So I was kind of like, oh, well, that's a very different take, you know, for him to be the son. And then as I'm watching, I'm thinking, well, why would Ra's al Ghul excommunicate his own son? You know, that's unusual. But again, I just went with it. I'm like, okay, well, this is Nolan's idea, and this is how he's going to do with the characters, and whatever. When she stabs Batman, I must have, like, I almost swallowed my popcorn whole. You know, like, I almost choked my popcorn because I was like, oh, shit, that's Talia al Ghul. Like, she didn't even have to say it. As soon as she stabbed him, I knew who she was. Because all of a sudden it came back to me, that's right, she's in this movie. You know? I had forgotten she was even in the movie. I thought that was a fantastic point. You know,
that point in the movie.
Big surprise.
Yes. It was very good. Again, someone like myself who didn't really know who she was, didn't know about the history, Ra's al Ghul, whatever his name is, and that he had a daughter, I was like, okay, wow, this is pretty good.
Definitely
and that they had a love interest, you know, kind of did explain why. Not just his faith to this, especially being excommunicated. He had an underlying reason why he kept going and kept his conviction because he loved her. So that was pretty good.
Right. It was her plan, and so it became his plan because of the way he felt about her. Now I do have another question for you here. As far as the way, as soon as it's revealed that Bane is not the mastermind behind this plot, that it's actually Talia al Ghul, did anything change for you as far as like how you viewed this whole setup?
The only thing that changed is that how quickly Bane was out of the picture.
That's amazing, right?
That really was. It's like, okay, we set this all up with Bane being the one to watch out for. He's the enemy. Blah blah blah. And then you have this explaining. She reveals who she is. Catwoman comes, uses the bike to blow Bane away, and that's it. He's done.
Right.
He's done in the movie. So that's the only part to me was like, really? Bane is gone like that? And you know what I mean? I can kind of understand that she was the mastermind behind it, but because he wasn't an intellectual person, it kind of...
It took away from his intellectualness.
Yeah, it did.
Because at that point...
He's like a lackey that he...
Exactly.
He's just a lackey. He's falling into that again, but in a different way.
He's a pawn. He's just a pawn. He's just a mercenary now. He's not what you thought he was. Basically.
Yeah, you thought he was
the whole movie.
Kind of like... jack of all trades.
Right.
Like, big, strong guy. He's intellectual. He can do all this other stuff, and you know what I mean?
Master strategist.
Yeah.
And then you find out he's not, because the whole plan was laid out by her. He just acted it out.
Yeah.
My other biggest point with this scene, which is one of my biggest gripes in the movie, you know, you spend about 2.5 hours with Bane. He's killed, and you don't even see him die, really.
No,
you see him get shot. He flies against the wall, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm saying. It's like...
You know, they could have, again, this goes back to my point of an extra 5 or 10 seconds. If you would have showed 5 or 10 seconds of him laying on the ground, breathing and dying, I'd have been perfectly happy. That's all you had to do. But the fact that Catwoman shoots him, says her line, Batman says his line, and then they walk out, and that's it. Really?
Yeah, it's like it was not even in their mind that he could still be alive. That kind of bothered me.
Right.
It's like they just walked out like, okay, next line of business. It doesn't even matter. I mean, to be quite honest, yes, they were dealing with something a little bit more pressing.
True.
But
True.
still, it's just like, if you still think this guy is going to be a threat in stopping you, you would have taken the time to at least, be like, is this guy really dead?
Well, and even if I don't even need them to check on the body, but show us, the viewing audience, that he's dead. Just show us that he's dead, because you can't spend all this time with this guy. I mean, he fought Batman. He broke Batman. He beat him down to nothing, and then Batman fights him. And don't get me wrong, the fight with Bane and Batman, both fights are phenomenal. Yeah. They're great fights.
Yes.
But the fact that you end his character like that just seems so empty.
Yeah, it could have been more. It really could have been more.
Just 5 more seconds, 10 more seconds would have just made his death more, But
especially because they built him up so much, is what you're saying. They took the whole movie to build up this guy who's so big, and they are explosives coming out of a freaking bat cycle, whatever the hell you call it. And I understand that they're powerful, but you're right. A little emotion of him actually breathing his last breath could have been very simple for them to have done.
I mean, and I'll be honest, even during parts of this movie, I was like, wow, Bane is awesome. Mm-hmm. When he takes over the stock marketplace, and he just doesn't care, He'll do anything. He'll kill anybody right in front of you.
I did like the motorcycle chase scene. That was pretty cool with, the hostage behind them, and it was just a really good scene. I like that.
Every scene with him in is phenomenal. So it's just to me, for him to end out like this, I just didn't like it. They could have done better.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's enough about that. Now let's talk about John Blake. Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays the cop, John Blake.
Oh, I really liked his role, first of all. I think it was really, really good. And at the end, it slapped me in the freaking face about who he was.
Right. Oh, let's hold up on that. Let's talk about him from the beginning. Okay, John Blake in the comic books is not a name that anybody knows. Okay? It's not a name used by anybody, as far as I know, in the Batman comics.
So they just made up this name?
So that was just a made-up name.
Oh, okay.
So for me, as well as you, we probably had the same reaction to this guy. We're like, wow, this guy's getting a lot of screen time.
Exactly.
The cop.
There was plenty of times I was thinking, honestly, I wasn't even thinking who he turned out. I was kind of thinking that, but only for a few moments.
Right.
It passed. And I'm like, oh, there's no way. You know what I mean? It wasn't like obvious in your face that this is who he turned out to be.
Right. No, I mean, we can get to that. I just wanted to do that first. But at the end, when he talks to the lady about his name, he says, my name is John Blake, and she's like, I don't have anything for you by the name John Blake. And he says, oh, here's my, use my real name. And he hands her the driver's license. He doesn't say it. And she says, oh, you should go by that name. I like it. Robin. So his name is Robin.
Yeah, but I thought she said, I could be wrong. I thought she said full name, like Robin was his middle name. I could have sworn she said full name, as opposed to...
No, I'm pretty sure she says you should use your real name.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, how do you go from the name that they gave him to Robin? I mean.
Right, and Robin was never actually Robin's name.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. That's something I definitely want to replay.
Well, here's my thinking on it. I'm going to give you my opinion as to why they did it this way. The original Robin, the first Robin, is Dick Grayson. Okay? If you're a comic book head, you know that, and some people might still know that anyway. But for the majority of people who are watching this movie, the name Dick Grayson probably means nothing. Okay? That might, if she would have said Dick Grayson there, a lot of people might have just been like, okay, well, who's that? That doesn't mean anything to me. But Nolan, has to know that the majority of his audience is not comic book heads.
Yeah.
And may not get that.
Mm-hmm.
So my thinking is the reason why they had him say his name is Robin is because everybody knows who Robin is. I mean, everybody knows Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
But not everybody knows Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson.
That's true.
So my thinking was that Nolan did it because he wanted it to appeal to the mass audience and for them to understand who he was.
And it just made perfect sense to me. Afterwards, like, okay, this guy became a detective. You know, he moved up through the ranks pretty quickly. I just really, really liked his character. And, of course, the person that they picked, I can totally see him playing Robin.
Right.
So that was great. I was like, yes, this was also a really well-casted individual.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, Nolan had said when he first started doing these movies that he was not going to do Robin. He didn't want to do Batman and the kid's sidekick. You know, so going into this movie, you're like, well, yeah, he's not going to do it. It's almost over now. You know, so the way he did it, I think, was perfect because he doesn't have to do the Robin, but he hinted that there is a Robin.
Yeah. Well, of course, him going into the cave and that whole ending sequence was just great.
It made you wish there was 15 more minutes of the movie, right?
Exactly. It kind of made you wish that there was a whole other movie coming out.
Yeah, knowing that this is the end of the trilogy does kind of... It allowed Nolan to end some things and allowed him to put Robin in without actually putting Robin in, but it also does kind of whet your appetite for, wow, I wish there was more.
You know what I thought after this? I thought that because knowing that the trilogy is over, I thought that maybe because they kind of set it up, if they really wanted to, I didn't even think Robin. I thought that they could actually do Nightwing.
Right. Okay.
Right. And that to me would be better than the whole Robin thing because Batman is Batman and Robin, but Nightwing it still could set up very easily into Nightwing because he's Robin before he becomes Nightwing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know.
And Nightwing is an independent character, whereas Robin was synonymous with Batman.
Exactly, and that's what I think. If they would ever do something like that, I would like to see Nightwing, not Robin.
Right, I agree.
Them go over his character because it's a part of his history, how he became Nightwing. But I would love to see Nightwing.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think if they were to continue it, that would be what I would like too.
Absolutely.
So like we said, he's in this movie a ton. You know, you don't really know. You don't really know why. You're like, okay, why is this guy in the movie so much? I mean, I think he's honestly has as much screen time as Bruce Wayne did.
Yeah.
So it's surprising when you have this totally new character to have that much screen time. But then obviously at the end it makes more sense. Now, the scene where John Blake confronts Bruce Wayne and tells him that he knows he's Batman. What were your thoughts on that whole scene?
Take me to the scene because I'm trying to remember.
Okay, well, he comes to the house. John Blake comes to Wayne Manor.
Oh, okay.
And they're talking in like a study or something, and he tells Bruce Wayne how he was also an orphan.
Yeah, that's right.
So he tells him that he was an orphan and he understands what it's like to put on faces to pretend you're happy, but then he says that's how he figures out he was Batman.
Yeah, that was it was a little odd. It's like, really? This kid figured out that he...
Right. It's that easy?
Why didn't everybody figure out that he was Batman?
Why hasn't Jim Gordon figured it out?
Yeah.
I mean, he's seen him in person.
That's actually probably what was the most confusing thing, that this kid figured it out so easily, and Jim Gordon, being a detective...
Right.
Took the end of the movie, the end of this movie to figure out, with Bruce Wayne basically telling him, like, flat out, a scene that he knew could be no other person but Bruce Wayne, that it was him.
Right.
I honestly thought through half of this movie that he did know it was Bruce Wayne, but he was just not wanting to convince himself that it was him. But then at the end of the movie, when he actually said Bruce Wayne, all shocked like that, I was like, really? You didn't know?
He didn't know, right.
It was weird because I really could have sworn he knew the way that they made him talk when he was talking to Blake, that he knew who it was, but he just didn't want to say.
Right.
That's what it seemed like to me, but then at the end...
But then obviously it wasn't because he says that, oh, Bruce Wayne? Like, totally shocked.
Yeah, but it was very odd that so quickly... this kid knew who he was.
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch for me. I mean, I would have rather, he stumble upon something Batman-y, and that's how he figures out Bruce Wayne's Batman. Like, Bruce Wayne just happens to leave something out or, whatever. some kind of evidence to the scene that he's Bruce Wayne. But for him to say, and I understand part of what they were trying to say, because kids are very good at picking up facial expressions and reading people. They can tell when you're being fake. So I can understand that point of it. But you're really trying to tell me that because Bruce Wayne is an orphan and because you're an orphan, well, Bruce Wayne must be Batman? What? So every orphan must be Batman? That just...
I mean, when they got to the end of the movie and you knew who Blake was, that kind of put it all together for me more, because I'm like, okay, they showed him to be a detective, and I just tried to think back, who is Robin in the Batman series? Besides just this nimble young kid who's like, but I guess from what I remember, he was really smart too.
Right.
So,
well,
maybe
and it depends what Robin you're talking about too, because Dick Grayson was Robin because of the whole his parents being killed in the circus. So Batman takes him in and adopts him and tells him that he's Bruce Wayne, whatever. Jason Todd finds out because he tries to steal the Batmobile, and so Batman takes him in and tells him.
Yeah.
But Tim Drake, the third Robin, is the only one of the Robins to have figured out that Bruce Wayne was Batman. He does it through detective work. He figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So if you're going that John Blake is Tim Drake, well, okay, that kind of makes sense. But they don't really ever go that route. The only way he finds out is because he's an orphan, and Bruce Wayne's an orphan, and he knows. It's a little weak, if you ask me.
It is, but based on what you're saying, if this guy's a detective like this...
But they don't ever talk about that. Like, I know that because of the comic, but...
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well,
but you as a viewer,
you probably put your own conclusion here that maybe this isn't the original Robin. This kind of the character that they give him being a detective like that would make more sense that he is the third Robin.
Right.
Then again...
How many people even know there's three Robins, though? That's the other thing.
Exactly. Where are the other ones?
Right, exactly. People might not even know there was more than one Robin, so...
I mean, I honestly didn't remember the third, so you saying that to me, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
No, there was two, obviously, because when Robin becomes Nightwing, then another Robin takes his place.
Right.
But I didn't realize another one besides that. Did that one die? Is that what happened? I can't remember.
Jason Todd died.
Okay.
Joker killed him.
Okay.
But then he comes back. But anyway, we're not going to get into that.
No, that's fine. It's just a little extra just because I honestly forgot about that. So.
So getting back to the Bane-Batman fight, which again, as I said, was phenomenal. That fight is taken from the Nightfall comics, where Bane breaks Batman's back. And that's the first introduction to Bane in the comics, and that's a pretty big scene in this movie. I mean, that was a phenomenal scene when he picks him up like that and just break your spirit, and takes his back over his knee. I mean, that's a great part. There's a lot of this movie that is taken from small parts of comics.
Okay.
But obviously not the whole thing. But okay, so we go from Batman. His back is broken. He's in the pit. Okay, which they don't really say where the pit is. I think he says the name of the pit, but I forget. But you don't know where this pit is.
Yeah, it's obviously some kind of desert location. But
right. I mean, is it a desert in Nevada, or is it a desert in, like, Iraq or Pakistan?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
Well, I guess that's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing.
Unless they mentioned it in the first movie, I kind of feel that they may have. That I just didn't pay much attention to it because it was kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know where that...
Maybe, and they tied it in. I don't know.
Now, there's 2 points from this scene that I want to bring up. Again, with the rapid healing, he breaks his back, somehow miraculously fixes his back within like a 2 or 3 month period, which is pretty fast. Like you said, he no longer has the gadget for his knees, but all of a sudden his knees are fantastic. He climbs the rope twice, falls twice, but yet his back is still okay after that.
Yeah.
Okay, again, these are leaps of faith that we have to take as a comic book, as a comic viewer and as a movie viewer. But then when he climbs out of the pit, okay, now as I said, we have no idea where he is. He could be in the States, he could be in Egypt, he could be in our country, whatever.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. That it's okay.
How?
How the hell did he get
Yes.
from wherever he is to the right place at the right time
Yes.
so quickly? I was saying that to my damn self. I
He
was like,
has no money. He's broke at this point, okay, because they stole all his money.
yep.
He has no access to any gadgets. Now here again is where I'm thinking 5 or 10 seconds would have made so much more. If they would have said, oh, he has a GPS on him, that now Alfred was able to triangulate because he's outside of the pit. Okay, I can buy that. Batman would be smart enough to keep a GPS on himself so that Alfred can find him. I can buy that. Okay, or that he has something that.
Oh, wait a minute. They couldn't even do that because wasn't he like not speaking to
Oh,
at that time?
true.
He fired
Very
Alfred.
true.
Because
Very true.
That scene actually was kind of weird for me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that point, that couldn't have even been an excuse because Alfred wasn't there.
Right. So even if he has like a GPS remote control device that he's able to summon the bat, plane to him to pick him up, okay, I could have bought that if they would have said that.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't. He just miraculously goes from outside the pit to on the city with Selina Kyle, how did he get past the army guards?
You know what? The funny thing is that I can almost bet you that almost all these scenes that we wish there was a little bit more, that they are made but not like finalized, and they're in that bonus content.
Director's cut or something. Yeah.
I can guarantee you.
I hope so.
But then they probably were just like, it's taking too long. We have to cut it. How can we cut this movie?
Right.
And then it leaves us kind of being like, okay, well, how did this happen?
I hope so. I hope so, because I would be perfectly fine with an over 3-hour movie if it includes all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think that helps fill out the some of these parts that we feel are just lacking in development and story.
Yep, I agree.
Now getting you brought up the whole Alfred Bruce Wayne part where he tells him about the letter. Now this is one of the few scenes where they bring up something from the second movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because besides the last 10 minutes of the second movie, and besides this scene with the letter, there's nothing referenced to that movie.
Yep.
So, what did you think about this whole part, the way it played out?
I honestly wasn't too convinced by it. I was kind of like, I just wasn't convinced 100% by this, that this is what took, them to have this big falling out,
Right.
Alfred's been with him as Batman for how long? And yeah, every time he was Batman, he was upset because he's risking his life. But then all of a sudden, it's so big that now he's like, I can't do it anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't too convinced with that. I mean, I fell for the part because they play it up with the music and
right.
Tense moments. But all in all, I wasn't totally feeling it.
Right. I mean, the acting by Alfred in that scene is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the acting by him the whole movie is phenomenal. But yeah, it did seem a little forced. That now all of a sudden you have a problem with him going out and fighting crime when you didn't have a problem with it all these other years.
Well, it kind of makes me want to see the movies again to see if there was anything like that. Maybe there was.
No, there really wasn't.
No?
He never questions him going out. I mean, and if you think about Batman Begins, Alfred was there by his side, designing the tools, designing the gadgets, figuring out how he was going to do these things. I
don't even. It's been so long since I've seen it.
Yeah, I know it's been a while, but so they just really didn't give a reason as to why they felt like now Alfred should be like, okay, I've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's a minor gripe. It's not a big deal.
No. It really wasn't in the whole scheme of things. And yeah, anybody, even friends, you have falling outs for whatever reason.
Right.
And because he was so much older, he really did care for him like a son and stuff like that. He just really cared for Bruce Wayne. I mean, I let it go. And a part of me was like, oh, okay, I'm not totally convinced by this. But then again, anyone who has this much love for some other person, really doesn't want that person to die. And that's basically what he was saying. He's like, I know this is a death sentence, and I don't want you to die.
Right.
So with that on its own, I was okay with it as it was, though it wasn't something I was like, oh, this is perfect. I knew this was going to happen or anything like that.
Right. No, it was unexpected. It was nice they went back to the second movie and kind of referenced something, so that you see the continuation of the trilogy. But again, yeah, it did seem a little forced to me. One point, I'm sorry, I forgot to bring up, at the death of Bane. One point I just wanted to say is, again, there was no shot of Bane dying. Now, the police captain, who was very much against going out and fighting Bane's men, he's hiding in the house, and then all of a sudden, Gordon is able to convince him. He's out there shooting people, and eventually he does get shot and he gets killed. They show him dying on the floor.
That's right. They
show him dead on the floor, for being shot.
Which, if you look at his, I was actually laughing at that point because his position looked so posed.
Right. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
You're really telling me that this character, who's had 5 or 10 minutes of screen time, he gets the death shot, but Bane doesn't. I had to bring that up because I was just like, that doesn't make sense.
That was probably simply because he was a good guy and Bane's a bad guy, so they want to give some more humility to, the good people of the movie.
Right.
So I was like, it's more important that a good person dies as opposed to a bad person. Why would you really care if the bad person's dead? Because he's bad. He's killing.
Right. But when you bring him up for 2 hours, when he's the central part of your movie, I think you have to.
Yeah.
I think that's a point that people are always going to have an issue with, is that they don't, show that. Now, one of the things that's talked about throughout the movie, especially in the beginning, is this whole Harvey Dent law that put thousands of criminals away. And Bane references it, Jim Gordon references it. They talk about how great it is that this law was enacted to keep the prisoners in jail. Okay, what law does Harvey Dent make that would keep the criminals in jail that wouldn't just be a law anyway?
Yeah, I know. It was kind of weird, and that law was really the only thing, which is why Gordon, right? Gordon is his name?
Right.
Didn't want to say his speech, didn't want to say the truth because he knew that this law was in effect and, people were happy with this and the blame was on Batman and Batman was nowhere to be found and blah, blah, blah.
But that's what I mean. Like, what law is there that if the person who wrote the law was found out to be corrupt, would all of a sudden release thousands of prisoners? That doesn't make any sense.
When did he have the time for it is what I want to really know.
Well,
Because... yeah, he's dead.
Because in the second movie, he has that whole part where he takes thousands of mob people, maybe not thousands, hundreds of mob people to trial. And they're all in the courtroom at the same time. And then judges start being killed, and now no one wants to take it to trial. And that's how that ends. It ends like that. They never go back to that. So now this movie starts off with, all these criminals are now in jail because of this great law that Harvey Dent enacted. But what law? What are you talking about?
But wait a minute, maybe because they said that Gordon didn't want to say it, he didn't want to show his speech. He
right.
believed that Batman was the enemy, that it wasn't Harvey Dent. It could have been assumed that Harvey really didn't make this law, that it was something that was kind of concocted with this cover-up story. That Batman was, the culprit here. Harvey was this, good guy after all. And, this law came into effect somewhat, but they just put it because he was a figure already.
Right. Okay.
I guess if you think of it that way, it could make sense because they kept on trying to make his character out to still be good when we all know that he was bad.
The White Knight, they referred to him in the second movie as the White Knight. I mean, I can understand that to a point. What you're saying is that maybe the civilian population would have had less trust for the police force had they known that Harvey Dent was actually Two-Face and was, trying to kill a little boy and doing all these things. I guess, again, it's just one of those things I wish they would have maybe said a little more about, or why is it Harvey Dent law? Why isn't it just a law? that they started enacting, around this time. Again, it's not a major thing, but it does. Again, it comes up major. It comes up bigger more at the point where Bane is reading the speech.
Yep.
Which that scene again was phenomenal to me because they show several different things going on as Bane is reading this speech. And there's not very often you see an actor basically reading his lines, but even though he was reading it, it still, had a lot of power and a lot of impact to it.
Yep.
Because
they even had the scene with Mr. Robin, what's his name?
John Blake, yeah.
Blake and the detective. I can't even think of their name.
Jim Gordon.
There you go. I get a blank here. Then they had a conflict that was going on, I believe, in the jail cell. The Scarecrow was, sentencing people.
Wasn't that awesome?
That was awesome. I love that they brought him back for it, which it's great. And you know what? Actually, now thinking about that could be why they didn't reference the second movie too much because, they couldn't really bring anyone back. I mean, they couldn't bring the main one back, obviously.
Right. They couldn't.
So I guess they decided to. Yeah, they decided maybe to focus more on the first movie because they could do stuff like that, like have him be there and have him do what he. That little bit was awesome, and I don't even know if many people remember that he was Scarecrow. I was like,
well, he's in all three movies because he was in the second one too.
Yeah.
So he's one of the few characters, besides Batman and then some of the main characters that's in actually all the movies, and he did great acting by him as well. The whole death or exile was just hysterical.
Yeah.
It's a great
We're gonna
part.
send you to death by exile.
yeah. It was just great. Now you brought up a good point, and actually that was a really good segue into what I wanted to talk about next. When you look at the first movie and you look at how it went into the second movie, and then you look at the second movie and how it went into the third movie. As I stated before, you could almost watch the first and the third movies and watch the second one, and not even watch the second one, and still understand it. Do you think that maybe, again, if Heath Ledger hadn't died, this third movie may have been a very, very different movie?
I think so. I think so a lot. I think that they didn't want to put too much into the second movie, especially having like clips including they could have easily had some clips referencing the Joker. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I guess they really didn't want to out of respect to the actor that died,
Right.
So I really think that that's what played a major part of why they went this route, more referencing the first movie, having only a few snippets of the second movie just to kind of give you that, okay, yeah, it is a trilogy.
Right. I have a feeling, and again, this is something that I've read online that others have said too, this movie would have been, might have still focused, maybe not mainly on the Joker, but he might have been a main, another character in this movie with some kind of effect. It might not have had anything to do with the League of Shadows at this point, because if you think about it, the second movie didn't even talk about the League of Shadows. The League of Shadows was over at the end of the first movie. They bring them back in the third movie, which again was fine. The story was great, but I wonder if Nolan was done with the League of Shadows, and then when he realized, oh wait a minute, I don't have the Joker anymore. Now I need to go somewhere else.
Obviously nobody could play that role again like that.
Right. And not even that anyone could play it. Look, I think Heath Ledger did a phenomenal job.
He did.
Do I think that there's another actor that could have done a better job? Maybe. But his role, Heath Ledger's role, would have been held in such high regard that I don't think, even if someone did a better job, no one would think it was a better job.
Exactly.
So why even go that route?
Exactly. That's true. Yep. I agree.
Because there was rumors when Dark Knight was coming out that the next one was going to have Riddler, that the next one was going to have Johnny Depp. It was going to be totally different than what it ended up being. So I wonder if Joker would have played a part in the third one.
It would have been very easy, especially like he plays opposite the Riddler very well. You could those characters kind of like they have a good chemistry.
Right.
How they bounce off of each other, so that would have been good. But I do like what they did, but yeah, it makes total sense why they really referenced the first movie so much.
Right.
One, kind of skipping over that, just to not.
Because at this point in the third movie, Joker's in Arkham because he got arrested at the end of the second one. They could have easily done shots of him running away from Arkham after Bane breaks it open.
Yeah, they could have. He would have been right in that courtroom as well.
Right. But it might have been him instead of Scarecrow.
Yeah.
That might have held more of an impact, him being in those scenes.
Yeah, exactly, because, hello.
Right. Because of the amount of money that the second one made because of the Joker and how good his role is, you have to think that they would have definitely put him into the third one.
Yeah.
There's no way they would have said, oh, you know what, we're going to go with two brand new characters that you know nothing about instead of using a character that just made us all this money.
Yeah, at least at some point, because they did not even reference.
He's not even talked about.
That was my biggest, I guess, gripe, that they didn't even mention him at all.
Right.
I assumed that being the end of the trilogy, that they would have mentioned all of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they just totally skipped over him, and I guess I can understand why. But then again, it still doesn't make too much sense. It's like he's still part of this.
Right.
So
no, I agree. So that kind of segues into my last point here. Last point that I have was the fact that Nolan was able to finish the trilogy, to do all three movies. You can definitely see what was started in the first, kind of kept on, even though not as much of the second was in the third movie. This for me was a great trilogy because you're able to see, from start to finish what his vision was. Maybe it wasn't exactly what his vision was going to be, but you're still able to see those seeds from the first movie planted all throughout the trilogy. I mean, you never see that in movies these days.
That's true. One point I do want to make about how the second movie ties in to the third is why Bruce Wayne is so broken as an individual. Because it's not just broken that he's hurt. He's broken because she's dead. His love is dead.
Right.
So that technically is probably the biggest tie-in to the second one. Really think about it, that her dying is why he's like this, why he let this go on for 8 years, not doing anything, not returning as a Dark Knight because he doesn't feel like he has a reason for this anymore.
Which again is very un-Batman-like, though. For him to take 8 years off and just not be Batman, after he made this dedication to doing this, and again, that goes back to the beginning. What we're saying is I could have understood if he wasn't Batman for a year or 2 years. But when they said it was an 8-year gap, I'm like, wow, he really wasn't Batman for that long? Just seems like, well, what was the point, It just seemed a little long to me. I think it could have been a shorter period of time.
It is a lot long.
Yeah.
But you're also setting up, what's her name, being grown, Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
True.
That probably actually maybe had the biggest impact as why it took so long.
Right.
Why they gave it this big of a span, because you can't have her being a kid and being a love interest having sex with Batman. Right.
No, definitely not.
And for her to get to her status that she was really high up there. She was trying to take over or help with the company or whatever the heck it was. You know what I mean? She had to be established where she came from. So 8 years is a pretty decent time for someone to move up the ranks.
She had to build her cover. She had to create her empire as this energy conservative person, whatever. She was well known by everybody at this point, so obviously that takes time. That's not overnight. So yeah, I mean, again, I can understand the time. It just seemed like a lot of time.
Yes, when you were first introduced to that time frame, you were like, what the heck?
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of time.
Yeah.
Between that. But again, it's not a major point. It's just one of the things that I wanted to bring up. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up about it?
Oh, actually, this is just a funny point that I got also from Elvis Duran. They mentioned that there were the scenes with Catwoman where she had her friend there and he was It was hilarious. They're saying that a lot of people can see that Catwoman in this movie was actually meant to be a lesbian. Now,
Yeah, I thought that too. Yeah.
I just wanted to bring it up because the way they said it, and I was like, I didn't think that originally, but when they said it, I kind of like thought to myself, the scenes that she had with her, it's like, was there something more going on there that they just didn't?
Yeah.
But I really don't think.
I don't know.
I think they were just girlfriends, you know.
Sister type, you know, big sister, little sister type.
It was just funny that, you know, little things like that can be taken in different ways if you really think about it. So
I think it was just the kind of way they looked at each other. You know, they kind of had glances at each other that made people think that there might be more going on than just, you know, little sister, big sister. But obviously there's nothing ever played on that. And, of course, you know, Selena Kyle leaves with Batman. So, you know, obviously, I mean, maybe she's bi. I don't know. Whatever. That doesn't really matter as far as the character development.
I mean, they never developed that she... Oh, no, does she? She does kiss him, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does, before he flies off.
That's right.
Oh, that's a point I almost forgot to bring up. I almost forgot to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
When he gets in the plane at the end, he's got the bomb. They show him flying the plane, and he's not quite over the water yet, and they show 10 seconds on the timer. Now remember, this bomb has a 6-mile radius of explosion.
I thought that too.
You know, if they would have showed 20 or 30 seconds on there, okay, I could have bought it, but 10 seconds? He got away in 10 seconds?
Yeah, well, and on top of that, the time was ticking down, and she still had enough chance to kiss him, and that scene wasn't that good. She just pecked him on the lips and just went, no. She pecked him, and then I think he had something to say to the detective at that point too before he actually went.
Right, because that's when he tells him he's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, so it's like all this.
What are you waiting for? Yeah, what are you waiting for? You can tell me you're Bruce Wayne when you come back.
Exactly, that's what I was like. All this time went by, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. I did like how they referenced the scene from the first one with Gordon putting the jacket on Bruce Wayne. I mean, that's pretty cool, you know. That little scene that meant nothing at the time, you know, they referenced that. And again, that's one of the nice things about having the same person do the trilogy. Because those kind of things will come back.
Exactly. And if you really think about it, that was a flashback. And how easily they could have done at least one flashback just to kind of mention or go over the Joker. It could have really...
Exactly my point.
How easy they inserted it there. Yeah. They could have done that, but, you know, I don't know. I guess they were just trying to cover all their bases and not try to tick anybody off. They wanted it to be a blockbuster, and if they think that people think it was going to be a disrespect to his name, they just didn't want to go anywhere close.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah, I understand. And, you know, it would have been nice to have seen, you know, obviously, you know, we wish he was still here, and it would have been nice to have seen how it would have played out if he was still around, you know. But again, this movie is phenomenal. Even for all the gripes that I have, all the issues I have with it, I still think it's phenomenal. It's amazing. I can't think of any reason why someone shouldn't see it.
Yeah, me either. You know what? Actually, there's another point I want to make, and it's just not a point. It's actually a comparison. IGN had put on their Start channel on YouTube, they put a comparison between this movie and The Avengers, and I thought it was a really good comparison. And I know you can't compare the two, but my opinion towards this.
Okay.
They were saying, which one do you like more? Mm-hmm. And my opinion on this, first of all, I loved both these movies. I thought at the time The Avengers was the best movie I've seen. Mm-hmm. And when I see this, I think this is the best movie I've seen. Mm-hmm. Now, I would still say that if I saw them in the reverse order because, and this is why I wanted to bring it up, because this one, like you mentioned earlier, it's more realistic. Though it's not realistic, it's more realistic.
Right.
Compare it to the scheme of The Avengers.
Right.
Which is amazing, but you don't have anything like a crazy monster that's like huge, which is kind of cool because I thought that they were going to go this way with Bane, you know, because Bane, you know, based on his character in his real character, he's wearing this thing to get pumped up and crazy.
He's a steroid freak and
exactly. They could have went that route, but they didn't. So when I compare the two movies that done so well in the box office, I like this one more because it has that realisticness to it. And
Okay.
it still made just as much of an impact as a movie that is so far-fetched, over-the-top fictional.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? So that's the only way I wanted to bring it up and compare the two, is because look what they were able to accomplish in this movie, being that it's just a man that's really good with has money and is a tech, and you know what I mean.
Right.
He doesn't have any super powers,
Right.
but this movie just was done so well with just this. So
Right.
that's why I kind of wanted to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, to me, the difference is the Avengers movie was fleshed out in the movies that came before it. The Avengers movie was so good because they did that. If
Yeah.
they would have just done an Avengers movie, I don't think it would have done well at all.
They set it up very well. You're
Right.
absolutely
You know, they set it up perfectly. But yeah, for me, it's kind of apples and oranges. You know, I think both movies have their good points. Both movies have some bad points. But the only thing they have in common to me is that they're comic book movies. You know, other than that, I mean, there's very little in common. I would not take a kid to see this movie, to see Dark Knight Rises.
And that's a good point with the unfortunate events that happened, and that there were kids.
Right.
Some people have brought that to my attention when I discussed that, and even when I was at the movie theater, to be quite honest, there were a lot of young children.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not a kids movie.
It's not. I mean, there's not a bunch of sex scenes or anything like that.
No.
To be quite honest, but it's just the message that it sends across is
Yeah.
very, you know what I mean? The kids won't really understand too much anyway. So
Right. This isn't, you know, the Avengers was more of a kids movie, I would say, because it was more of the popcorn action-y type movie, whereas this one has a lot more depth. You know, the characters. I mean, Bane's killing people left and right, choking them out and breaking their necks. I mean, he does that like 4 or 5 times. Is that really something that, you know, you want to see a little kid do? That doesn't happen at all in the Avengers movies. You know, Loki's not really killing anybody. You know, he makes a couple people his slaves, and they walk around, and he might shoot a blast at somebody. You know, and the Avengers might shoot blasts at some of the alien guys, but they're monsters, not human beings. You know, so you can kind of easily, you know, a kid is able to easily differentiate. Okay, this is a monster fighting, you know, with this guy, versus Batman, where it's humans fighting humans. This is people.
And I only blame the fact that it's Batman is why they went to see it, because the other Batman movies weren't as bad. This one's a totally different approach. This trilogy, you know what I mean? It's the darker side. So
it's definitely the darkest of the three. It definitely is, and that's surprising because considering the Joker was pretty dark. I mean, in the beginning he kills all those people, you know, in with the bank heist. But really, other than that, he doesn't have any. He has the whole pencil scene with the guy at the table, you know, where he says, "I want to show you my pencil trick," and he smashes the guy's head in the pencil.
Yeah.
But
and they showed how his face,
Right, he references it and he holds a knife in his mouth, you know, but there's no actual violence from it. This one is definitely the more violent of the three movies.
Yeah.
But I definitely, yes, I couldn't agree more. This is not a movie for kids.
Yeah.
You know. But anyway, yeah, that's all I have on this. So again, phenomenal movie. I'm trying to think what I would give it out of 10. I mean, I'd have to give it a 9. I mean,
I'm not even sure what constitutes as a 10, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
But I guess a 10 definitely wouldn't have those points that we mentioned that we wish they would have embellished and explained their certain things more. A perfect movie,
right.
They would have covered all those bases.
Right. Fill the plot holes.
Exactly. This definitely wasn't a perfect movie because of that, because it still left you wondering a little too much in certain areas that they could have easily took the time to explain.
Right. You when you have to assume certain things for certain parts of the movie, that's a negative. That's a hole. Because you shouldn't. The movie should explain everything. You know, it should, or at least with some, you know, semblance of story. You know, you should have that there. You know, you shouldn't have to be like, oh well, they must have done it because of that. you shouldn't have to make that leap.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so I would agree with you. I was gonna say a 9 for this movie.
Okay. Yeah, just definitely phenomenal. I really want to see it again.
Yes,
Because there's,
definitely subtitles on, just to see
yeah.
if there was something that I missed in the little time that I could not understand Bane's voice. If maybe there was something extra
Right.
that was very witty that he said or something. I don't know. I don't know what I missed. So.
Oh, I mean, okay. I gotta bring this up. One of my favorite lines is in the very beginning of the movie, where they're doing the whole holding the hostage outside the window. They fire the gun near him. They bring him back in. They do it to the second guy, and the guy's like, "Why won't you talk? Why won't you talk?" And then Bane says, "Perhaps he's wondering why you would shoot a man before throwing him out of a plane."
Yeah.
I love that line.
That was a good line.
That's phenomenal. And the fact that that's the first line you hear from the main villain, really, of the movie, I just thought it just totally set up his character.
Yeah, that was good.
I had to bring that up. I should have brought that up earlier, but yeah, I love that part.
That was good.
And even to go back to some of the cheesy lines that like Catwoman has with the, I don't know about this whole no gun thing.
Yeah.
They were kind of cheesy, but they weren't that cheesy.
No, they weren't that bad.
They weren't like completely out of place.
But that's Catwoman's character anyway, so.
Right.
You know what I mean? She's known for those one-liners opposite Batman. How many times? You know what I mean?
Or how about when she leaves Batman? When she leaves him, and he turns around. Oh, that's what that feels like.
Exactly. That actually I really liked because that drew a little bit of comedy in there, and definitely hardly any comedy at all.
Right.
So it just that was a good.
That was just great. The fact that they even referenced that.
Yeah.
At all.
That was good.
I think that was one of the parts where the entire audience, when I was watching it, just broke out laughing.
Yeah.
One of the few scenes you're actually gonna laugh at.
Exactly. To break it up, which is good.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad they did that. That was good. Oh wait, actually, what did you think of the Bat copter? Or what the hell?
The Bat. Well, they called it the Bat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was weird looking.
It was what it was.
I mean, if you really think of it, all of them were more military-like,
Right.
thing. I love the bike. This one. I mean, I'm not sure.
Right.
I can't remember if they used the bike before. They probably did, obviously.
They did, yeah.
But they just emphasized the way that it turned, and the wheels went like, that
was awesome. Yeah.
So hot.
Yes.
In this movie, I was like blown away every time. I just wanted more of the sequences with the motorcycle, and when it did that, it just was so cool.
Yeah, it was like making 90-degree turns. Immediately he could just turn down an alley.
Yeah.
Without actually turning.
Yep, that's just hot. I love it.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about the flying plane, but whatever. It was what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Bat Pod was obviously the best. They don't even really show the tumbler at all in this movie, except for when Bane has it.
Yeah.
Oh, see, all these things I keep forgetting, and I didn't write this one down. How does Bane know he's Bruce Wayne?
Oh. I don't know.
How did Bane know he was Bruce Wayne?
Well, you could just easily assume because he was getting the intel from her.
But how did she know he was Bruce?
But didn't she figure? When did he figure it out? And I can't remember where it was in the movie.
Well, Bane knows right away because he.
Oh, when he sets him up, when Catwoman sets him up, right? He's already calling him by name, and Catwoman's shocked because then she realizes then who he is.
Right, and even before that, though, he must have still known he was Bruce Wayne because he broke into his armory.
I would still assume that it was, all set up from what's her name?
From Talia.
For Talia, yeah, exactly. Because she was setting things up from the beginning, from the get-go. This is why she was going up the ladder, and she knew eventually she would get in contact with Bruce Wayne, and she was going to play on the strings of him, having a dead lover, and, that whole stuff. So I'm just going to assume that another assumption that it was...
Right, exactly. That's my problem with it. This is another assumption.
Yeah, because it was her, yeah.
The other thing is, too, and you brought this up, he calls Batman, Bruce Wayne, while Catwoman's there. But then later on, when Bruce Wayne comes back and they meet on the bridge, remember how she referenced your powerful friend?
No, I think that was just pure sarcasm.
You think that was just sarcasm? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yep. I knew immediately that was just sarcasm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would make that would be such a big right.
That would make no sense,
yeah,
right?
It would make no sense. He said right in front of her face. He was
Mr. Wayne. Yeah, he kept calling Mr. Wayne.
Exactly, and then they even showed her face that she was shocked.
Right.
Oh wow, this is him, and
right.
that's why she felt a little bit more remorse than she would have just giving in the bat.
To anybody, right?
Yeah, exactly, because she knew who he was and that he wasn't a bad guy.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, I guess it's one of those scenes I need to see again because I didn't really fully remember, what had happened after, she finds out he's Bruce Wayne. Because I remember watching it in the movie thinking that her reaction was that she didn't know, but yeah, maybe I just totally missed that. So there's so much. I mean, this movie is almost 3 hours long, and it doesn't feel like 3 hours long because it flies by.
It really doesn't. The longest part of this movie was the previews to get to the movie. But
yeah,
when the movie got started, it really flew by pretty good. So
yeah, it definitely does. And even though you don't even see Batman until 40 minutes into the movie, I mean, he's not Batman for a while in this movie, but it doesn't detract from it. Doesn't take away from it.
Yep. Definitely a good movie. Obviously people who are seeing this, well, spoilers, hello.
Yeah, I know. We probably should have said that at the beginning, but oh well.
Well, we'll say it in the title.
Yeah.
It's the discussion, what we're going to say. But if you haven't seen it and you're okay with spoilers, you know what's going to happen, but it's still definitely worth your time. So
Yes, you definitely got to see it. So, all right, well, I don't have any more points, so do you have anything?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, well, until next time, this is Two Bad Nerds.
Yeah, with Ben
and Danny.
There you go.
And we're out of here.
All right, bye.
Huzzah!